The force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of intention and consequence. But some forces refuse to be bound by anything, not gravity, not physics, not even the boundaries between universes. It was one such force, pure and unrestrained, that tore a hole in the fabric separating two realities and sent it hurtling toward a war-torn galaxy far, far away. The Grand Line had never behaved like this before. One moment the Thousand Sunny was cresting a storm swell during a running battle with a rival pirate crew, cannon fire lighting up a bruised purple sky. The next, the ocean itself seemed to fold inward, a spiral of light and screaming wind opening beneath the ship's hull like the galaxy had decided to swallow them whole. "Nami, what's happening?" Luffy bellowed, both arms stretched wide and hooked around the mast as the Sunny pitched violently. "I don't know. This isn't on any chart I've ever seen." Nami screamed back, clutching her log pose, which was spinning so fast the needle blurred into a solid ring. Then silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. The Thousand Sunny drifted, not on water, but in the black. Stars hung motionless around them in a way that made no sense, cold and distant, and utterly unlike the sky the crew had known their whole lives. Below them, impossibly, a planet curved away into darkness, its surface pocked with the lights of cities that did not belong to any nation Nami had ever charted. "Is that a planet?" Usopp's voice cracked. "We're in the sky. We're in the actual sky. Why haven't we fallen?" "Frankie, is the Sunny okay?" Luffy demanded, already climbing the rigging to get a better look at the impossible view. "She's fine structurally, but Luffy, there's no water. There's no air out here, according to my instruments, and yet we're breathing just fine. I don't have a science for this." Frankie's voice wavered between panic and fascination. "Cyborg, I worrying," as he scanned the void. Robin stood at the ship's bow, her expression unreadable as she studied the alien starfield. "This isn't the Grand Line anymore. I don't think it's even our world." If the crew of the Thousand Sunny felt fear, it was buried quickly beneath something more familiar, curiosity, and the itch of adventure that had carried them across oceans and through wars gods themselves had waged. Luffy grinned, wide and reckless, sunlight from some distant twin star catching in his eyes. "Well," he said, "guess we're exploring space now." The ship began to drift, caught in some current none of them could name, pulled steadily toward the glowing world below, an outer rim moon, though none of them knew it yet, sitting at the ragged edge of a galaxy locked in the grip of an iron-fisted empire. Down on that moon's surface, in a scrapyard settlement built from the bones of decommissioned freighters, smugglers and moisture farmers and small-time criminals were about to witness something that would upend every assumption they held about who and what could exist in their galaxy. The Sunny broke through the moon's thin atmosphere in a shrieking arc of friction fire, water evaporating off her hull in hissing plumes, and slammed down in a dry lakebed on the settlement's outskirts. Dust rolled outward in an expanding wall, swallowing the ship whole. For a long moment, there was nothing but ringing silence and the settle of debris. Then the plank dropped, and Luffy walked out into a strange, dry, red dust world unlike anything the Grand Line had ever shown him, stretching his arms overhead with a satisfied crack. "Ah, that was a fun ride. Sanji, I'm starving. Is there anything to eat around here?" Zoro was already scanning the horizon, one hand resting on the hilt of his blade, sensing something in the air that set his instincts on edge, a wrongness, a tension he couldn't yet name. He'd spent years honing observation hockey to read danger before it arrived, and here in this world, the signal felt muffled, distorted, like trying to hear a conversation through thick glass. It unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. "Something's off," he muttered. "The way I read intent, read danger, it's different here. Fainter. Like there's some other kind of pressure in the air messing with it." Robin, ever perceptive, tilted her head. "The energy here does feel different. Not hostile, exactly. Just present. Like the world itself is watching." She wasn't wrong. Unbeknownst to any of them, the ambient hum of the Force, the mystical energy field that bound this galaxy's stars and species together, had never encountered anything quite like hockey before. The two forces recognized each other as kin, distant cousins born from different corners of existence, and their overlapping frequencies created static, a temporary fog that would clear only as the crew adapted to this new reality. At the settlement's edge, a cluster of moisture farmers and off-world smugglers stared in open disbelief at the towering, half-organic, half-mechanical ship and the collection of wildly dressed strangers now spilling out of it. A scrawny boy in a straw hat and open red vest, a green-haired swordsman with 3 blades at his hip, a woman with an eerily calm smile crossing her arms atop the ship's figurehead. That thing just fell out of the sky. One smuggler whispered to another, hand inching toward the blaster at his hip. No transponder signal, no distress call. Nothing. It just appeared. Word would travel fast on a moon like this one, faster than any of the Straw Hats could anticipate. And in orbit above them, an Imperial long-range sensor array had already flagged an unregistered energy signature crashing through the atmosphere. The kind of anomaly that triggered automatic reports up a chain of command that stretched all the way to officers who did not tolerate mysteries in their sector. The Straw Hats had sailed into wars against warlords, emperors, and gods before. But they had never sailed into a galaxy where the very air seemed to hum with a power that knew their footsteps before they took them. Luffy, blissfully unaware of any of this, simply grinned at the wary settlers approaching the ship. Hey, you guys got any meat around here? If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. The settlers didn't answer Luffy's question about meat. Instead, 3 of them raised blasters, and the wariness in their eyes sharpened into something closer to fear. Nobody moves, the lead smuggler barked, a weathered man with a scarred jaw and a voice that had clearly given orders in far worse situations than this one. That ship of yours doesn't match anything in the registry. No transponder code, no hull markings I recognize. And it just fell out of clear sky without so much as a re-entry burn. So either you're smugglers running dark tech nobody's ever heard of, or you're something the Empire's gonna want to know about. Either way, you're gonna start explaining. Luffy blinked at the weapons pointed his way with more curiosity than concern, tilting his head like a dog hearing an unfamiliar sound. Those are weird guns, he said. They don't look like Usopp's slingshot. Luffy, Nami hissed, stepping down from the ship's railing with her hands raised in a placating gesture toward the armed settlers. Maybe don't provoke the people pointing weapons at us. I'm not provoking anyone. I just think their guns look weird. Zoro had already positioned himself half a step in front of Nami without seeming to move at all, his hand resting easy on Wado Ikemanji's sheath. He wasn't drawing, not yet, but every line of his body promised he could, faster than any of these settlers could pull a trigger. His observation hockey, still fogged and strange in this world's atmosphere, nonetheless picked up something useful. None of these people carried themselves like true killers. Nervous men protecting their scrap of territory, not soldiers. We're not here to cause trouble, Robin said smoothly, descending from the figurehead with the unhurried grace of someone who had talked her way out of far worse rooms than this. Our ship suffered an unusual malfunction. We didn't intend to land here, and we have no interest in your business, whatever it may be. The lead smuggler's eyes flicked between the strange assortment of arrivals. A reindeer thing standing on 2 legs and trembling behind a broad-shouldered blue-haired man, a skeleton in a suit and top hat who was impossibly still walking and talking, a boy in sandals with his arms crossed like he owned the lakebed he was standing on. It was too much, too strange, to process through the lens of ordinary smuggling disputes. That's a talking skeleton, one of the younger settlers whispered, backing up a step. I didn't know droids could look like that. I'm not a droid, Brooks said, delighted despite the tension, adjusting his hat. Though I suppose, being already dead, I don't have much room to argue about being unusual. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Chopper let out a small whimper and pressed closer to Frankie's leg, whiskers twitching. Everyone's scared of us, he mumbled. We didn't even do anything yet. Give it time, Zoro muttered. Sanji, meanwhile, had drifted toward the edge of the group with his hands in his pockets, sizing up the settlement beyond the armed men, a cluster of makeshift dwellings cobbled together from scavenged starship hulls, a hand-cranked water purifier hissing steam into the dry air, thin children watching from doorways with the particular stillness of people who had learned not to draw attention. His jaw tightened. He recognized poverty when he saw it, no matter what galaxy it wore. "You folks eating all right out here?" he asked, voice mild, though something colder moved behind his eyes. The lead smuggler barked a humorless laugh. "Eating? On an imperial tax moon, with half our water rights sold off to keep the local garrison happy? We eat what we can grow between patrol sweeps, off-worlder, and it's none of your business." That answer settled into Luffy's chest like a stone dropped into still water. His easy grin faded, replaced by the flat, assessing look his crew had learned to recognize. The look that came right before Luffy decided something in the world in front of him was wrong and needed fixing. "Sanji," he said quietly, "make food. Lots of it." "Way ahead of you, Captain." Sanji was already moving back toward the Sunny's galley without waiting for permission from anyone, boots crunching against the dry lake bed. The lead smuggler's blaster wavered, uncertain how to respond to an armed standoff dissolving into a cooking request. What are you doing?" "Feeding people," Luffy said simply, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. "You've got kids over there who look hungry. That's a problem. I fix problems." "You don't know anything about our problems, boy. You don't know what it's like living under a garrison that reports every unusual thing straight up the chain. And believe me, a ship falling out of the sky counts as unusual. They'll be here within the hour, maybe less." That got Nami's attention fast. "Garrison? As in soldiers? How close?" "Close enough. There's an outpost 2 clicks from here, standard Imperial Patrol rotation. Once their scanners flagged your entry, and trust me, they flagged it, you can bet a probe droid's already on its way to verify. After that, it's stormtroopers, or worse, someone from Sector Command who actually cares about anomalies." Frankie cracked his knuckles, metal grinding against metal. "Storm what now? Sounds like trouble." "I like trouble." "You should be scared of trouble, not excited about it," Usopp said, sweat beading on his brow as he did his familiar calculation of how quickly he could hide behind something solid. "We don't even know what these Imperial guys can do. For all we know, they've got Sea Kings on leashes." "There's no ocean here, Usopp," Nami pointed out. "That doesn't mean there isn't something worse." Robin, ever the scholar even in crisis, crouched by the edge of the settlement and studied the strange emblem stamped onto a discarded supply crate, a stylized, angular insignia she didn't recognize, cold and geometric in a way that reminded her of old tyrannies she'd read about in buried histories. "Whoever this empire is," she said, "they've built something vast enough to tax and patrol even a backwater moon like this one. That kind of reach doesn't come from a small organization." "Great," Usopp groaned. "So we crash land in the territory of some galaxy-sized world government, except worse, apparently." The settlement's residents, meanwhile, had begun to relax by fractions, watching as Sanji re-emerged from the ship's galley, already carrying trays stacked absurdly high with skewered meats. Some improvised stew bubbling in a massive pot Frankie had wheeled out on a hover cart. The smell of real cooking rolling out over the dusty lake bed for what was clearly the first time in longer than anyone wanted to admit. Children edged closer despite their parents' wary hands on their shoulders, drawn by hunger stronger than fear. "Eat first," Sanji said, setting the trays down with practiced ease. "Questions later. A hungry person can't think straight, and I won't have anyone starving in front of me while I've got a working kitchen." The lead smuggler lowered his blaster slowly, some of the suspicion in his face giving way to something more complicated. Disbelief, maybe, or the particular exhaustion of a man who had expected violence and received food instead. "Who are you people?" Luffy grinned again, the earlier tension bleeding out of his shoulders now that there was food involved and problems being solved in the way he understood best. "We're the Straw Hat Pirates." "I'm Luffy. I'm going to be the Pirate King." "Pirates," the smuggler repeated flatly. "Of course you are. Space is one thing. Space pirates who cook better than the garrison mess hall is a whole different thing." "We're not from space exactly," Nami tried to explain, though even she wasn't entirely certain how to phrase their situation. "We're from the sea. A very different sea, from what I can tell." Before the smuggler could press further, a new sound cut through the settlement, a distant mechanical whine, rising steadily out of the eastern sky. Every settler froze mid-bite. Zoro's head snapped up, hand tightening on his sword. "That's not one of ours," the lead smuggler said grimly. all his earlier hospitality evaporating into hard, practiced fear. That's an Imperial probe droid. They're already here, high above the settlement. A small spherical droid bristling with sensor arrays and a single crimson optic descended through the thin atmosphere. Its scanners already cataloging the anomalous ship, the unregistered life signs clustered around it, and the impossible readings of 9 individuals whose biological signatures matched nothing in any Imperial database. It hovered at a cautious distance, recording everything, before angling upward and streaking back toward orbit to deliver its findings. The Straw Hats had been in this galaxy for less than an hour, and already, somewhere far above them, a report was being filed. One that would soon land on a desk belonging to officers who did not appreciate mysteries, and who possessed the resources of an entire empire to solve them. Luffy watched the droid vanish into the sky, chewing thoughtfully on a piece of meat, entirely unbothered. So that's what they send to check people out, huh? Kinda small. Small doesn't mean harmless, Robin said quietly, watching the point in the sky where it had disappeared. I have a feeling this galaxy's leash is longer and tighter than anything we've encountered before. The probe droid's departure left an uneasy quiet hanging over the settlement, but it was Zoro who broke it first, stretching his arms overhead with the particular restlessness of a man who'd been sitting still too long. So we've got soldiers coming, he said. How long before they get here? Could be an hour, could be tomorrow, the lead smuggler admitted, wiping stew from his chin with the back of his hand, considerably more relaxed now that his stomach was full. Depends on whether Sector Command thinks you're worth a personal visit or just another glitch in the sensor net. Either way, you'd be smart to make yourselves scarce before they arrive. There's a settlement about a day's walk from here, bigger, rowdier, cargo hub called Dre's Landing. If you're looking to disappear for a while or figure out what in the stars you actually are, that's the place. Lots of people passing through who don't ask questions. Lots of people who do, too, if you're not careful. Nami was already unfolding a scrap of paper to sketch whatever crude map the smuggler could offer, her instincts for navigation kicking even in an alien galaxy. How rowdy are we talking? The smuggler's mouth twisted into something between a smirk and a warning. Rowdy enough that the local muscle running the place won't take kindly to newcomers eating into their territory. You show up throwing your weight around, you'll draw exactly the kind of attention you're trying to avoid. Luffy's ears perked up at the word muscle, the way they always did at the prospect of a fight, but Sanji caught the look and flicked him lightly on the back of the head. We're trying to keep a low profile, Captain. Try to remember that for at least 5 minutes. I can be low profile, Luffy said, already grinning in a way that suggested the opposite. They set off before midday. The Thousand Sunny hastily camouflaged under salvage tarps and scrap metal at the smuggler's suggestion. Useless against any serious Imperial scan, but enough to avoid a casual flyover. The walk to Dre's Landing took them across a barren, red dust landscape unlike anything the Grand Line had prepared them for. No ocean, no humidity. Just endless flat horizon broken by jagged rock formations, and the distant hum of atmospheric processors keeping the settlement's water table from collapsing entirely. Dre's Landing turned out to be exactly what the smuggler promised, a sprawl of docking bays and cantinas built into a canyon wall, thick with freighter pilots, bounty hunters, and off-world traders haggling over cargo in half a dozen languages the crew didn't recognize. The Straw Hats drew stares the moment they walked in, but stares were nothing new to a crew that had spent years being the strangest thing in every room they entered. It was Usopp, predictably, who found trouble first, or rather, trouble found him, in the form of a broad-shouldered local enforcer who took exception to Usopp's nervous, fumbling knocking over a stack of crates outside a cantina. "Watch where you're going, off-worlder," the enforcer growled, shoving Usopp hard enough to send him sprawling into the dust. Behind him, 3 more armed men peeled off from the cantina's entrance, the kind of casual, practiced menace that came from controlling a territory nobody dared challenge. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." Usopp scrambled backward, hands raised. All bluster instantly evaporated in the face of real danger. "You're gonna owe us for the damaged goods. And for wasting our time." The enforcer's hand drifted toward the blaster at his hip, and for a moment the whole street seemed to hold its breath, onlookers instinctively backing away from what looked like the opening move of a beating, or worse. Luffy was there before the blaster cleared its holster. He didn't run, exactly. One moment he was 20 feet away, examining a fruit stall with open curiosity, and the next his arm had stretched impossibly across the intervening distance, closing around the enforcer's wrist like a length of rubber cable, yanking the weapon from his grip before a single shot could be fired. The crowd's collective gasp was audible. "That's not nice," Luffy said, releasing the wrist and letting his arm snap back to normal length with a soft thwip of displaced air. He said sorry. "You don't shoot someone for saying sorry." The enforcer stared at his own empty hand, then at Luffy, then at the 20-foot gap that had somehow closed in an instant. What are you?" "I'm going to be the Pirate King," Luffy said, as though that answered the question, which, to be fair, it usually did back home. The enforcer's confusion curdled fast into fury, the kind that came from being humiliated in front of an audience that included his own men. "Get him," he barked, and his 3 companions surged forward, blasters rising. What happened next took less than 4 seconds. Zoro moved first, 3 swords clearing their sheaths in a single fluid motion, and where there had been 4 armed men advancing on his captain, there were suddenly 4 men frozen mid-stride, their blasters sliced cleanly into smoking pieces on the ground before any of them had even registered he'd crossed the distance between them. He hadn't cut flesh, hadn't needed to. A swordsman of his caliber could disarm a room without spilling a drop of blood if he chose to. And today, in a galaxy he didn't yet understand, he chose restraint. "Oi," he said, resheathing his blades with a soft click, "you really don't want to find out what happens if you draw those again." The enforcer who'd started it all stumbled backward, staring between his ruined weapon, his equally disarmed companions, and the green-haired swordsman who'd somehow moved faster than his eyes could track. "Nobody's that fast," he whispered. "Nobody human moves like that." "We get that a lot," Zoro said, unbothered. The crowd that had gathered outside the cantina erupted, not in fear exactly, but in the raucous, delighted noise of people who lived hard lives in a lawless port and had just witnessed something genuinely entertaining happen to men they clearly resented. A few onlookers even started laughing, one old freighter pilot slapping his knee and hooting at the sight of the local muscle disarmed in seconds by a boy with a straw hat and a swordsman with an unnerving smile. "You just made yourself some enemies," a voice said from the cantina doorway, dry and amused. A woman leaned against the frame, arms crossed, dressed in a mix of practical armor and smuggler's leathers, a blaster rifle slung casually across her back. Her eyes moved over Luffy and Zoro with sharp, assessing interest, the look of someone calculating value, not threat. "Those 4 work for the trade cartel that runs half the docking fees in this canyon. You just cost them a lot of face in front of a very crowded street." "They started it," Luffy said cheerfully, already forgetting the confrontation in favor of eyeing a nearby food stall. "Didn't say you were wrong to end it," the woman said, pushing off the doorframe and studying them with new interest. "Just saying, word's gonna travel. People who move like you two just tend to attract attention in a hurry. Cartels, bounty hunters, and worse. This a bad time to ask where exactly you're from? Because that's not a fighting style I've seen anywhere in this sector. And that stretching trick isn't something even the best cybernetics on the black market can replicate." Nami stepped forward quickly, sensing an opportunity and a danger in equal measure. "We're travelers. Far travelers. We'd rather not draw more attention than we already have, honestly." The woman's mouth curved into something like a smile, equal parts curious and calculating. "Name's Kita. I run cargo through here when the Empire's not looking too closely, which is getting harder by the month. You lot are either the luckiest fools I've ever met or something a lot more interesting. And either way, you're going to want a friend in this port before the wrong people come asking questions about the crew that disarmed 4 cartel enforcers without breaking a sweat." Robin studied the woman with quiet interest, reading the confident posture of someone who'd survived plenty in a galaxy this unforgiving. "And what would a friend like you want in return?" "Nothing yet," Kita said. "Consider it an investment. Something tells me you're about to become very popular around here, one way or another, and I'd rather be standing close to that kind of trouble than far away from it when the credits start moving." Behind her, deep in the shadowed corner of the cantina, a figure in a dark hooded cloak lowered a data slate they had been quietly filling with notes, watching the stretching boy and the impossibly fast swordsman with an interest that had nothing to do with cartel politics and everything to do with old, dangerous instincts stirring for the first time in years. Kita's offer hung in the air, but before Nami could formulate a diplomatic response, a new sound rippled through the crowded street, the low, synchronized thud of armored boots marching in formation, cutting through the market noise like a blade through cloth. Conversations died. Vendors began quietly folding up their stalls. The old freighter pilot, who'd been laughing moments earlier, suddenly found urgent business elsewhere. "That's not cartel muscle," Kita said, her earlier amusement draining into something sharper, more alert. "That's an Imperial patrol. A real one, not just a probe droid. They don't usually walk the landing unless something's got Sector Command's attention." Around the corner marched a squad of white-armored soldiers, blasters held with the crisp precision of soldiers who trained constantly and killed without hesitation, led by an officer in a gray uniform whose posture radiated the particular arrogance of a man used to being obeyed on sight. "That armor's weird," Usopp whispered, edging behind Frankie's broad frame. "It's so uniform, like they're all wearing the exact same face." "They probably are," Robin murmured. "That kind of standardization doesn't happen by accident." The officer's eyes swept the crowded street and landed, with unnerving accuracy, directly on the straw hats. "You," he called out, voice amplified slightly by some device in his collar. "The group that arrived on an unregistered vessel this morning. You will submit to identity verification and vessel inspection by order of the Galactic Empire." Luffy tilted his head, genuinely puzzled. "Why?" The officer's mouth thinned, unused to being questioned rather than obeyed. "Because your ship registered as an anomalous energy signature inconsistent with any known hyperdrive configuration, and because 9 biological signatures with no matching records in any Imperial database appeared simultaneously on a moon under Imperial jurisdiction. That is more than sufficient cause. Comply, and this proceeds smoothly." "And if we don't?" Zoro asked, one hand resting easy on his sword hilt, the picture of relaxed indifference that had unsettled far scarier men than this officer. "Then this proceeds considerably less smoothly." The officer gestured, and the stormtroopers behind him raised their blasters in unison, a wall of white armor and leveled weapons that would have made most beings in this galaxy freeze in terror. The Straw Hats had faced Marines with cannons, warlords with devil fruit powers, and creatures born from the depths of the sea. A row of soldiers, however disciplined, however uniform, did not register on the same scale of threat. "You should probably not point those at us," Sanji said conversationally, lighting a cigarette with unbothered calm. "It tends to go badly for the people who do." "Last warning," the officer snapped. "Stand down and surrender for processing." Nami stepped forward quickly, hands raised in the universal gesture of someone trying to prevent a catastrophe. "We don't want trouble. We really are just travelers who got lost. If you'll just let us explain." "Explanations happen after processing." The officer cut her off. "Not before." It was Kita who moved first, melting back toward the cantina doorway with a practiced instinct of someone who had survived plenty of Imperial sweeps by simply not being present for them. "This is where I make myself scarce," she murmured toward Robin. "Find me after, if you're still breathing. I'd genuinely like to hear how this turns out." The officer's patience, thin to begin with, ran out entirely. "Fire on my mark if they resist arrest." Luffy's expression shifted, not to fear, but to the flat, dangerous calm that his crew recognized as the moment before violence became inevitable. "We're not going to get arrested," he said simply. "We haven't done anything wrong. And even if we had, you're not strong enough to take us in." The officer's face flushed red with fury at the casual dismissal. "Mark." Blaster fire erupted, a wall of crimson bolts converging on the small cluster of straw hats standing in the open street. None of it landed. Zoro's blades were already moving, a blur of steel that intercepted 3 bolts and sent them scattering into nearby crates in showers of sparks. Sanji's legs swept upward in a motion too fast for the human eye to properly track, kicking aside a bolt aimed at Chopper with the same casual precision he'd use to flick away an annoying insect. Frankie's cybernetic arms simply absorbed a direct hit with a metallic clang, the armor barely scorched. And Luffy didn't move at all. He simply stood there as 3 bolts converged on his chest, and the shots passed clean through the space where flesh should have been resistance, his body gone briefly, impossibly rubber loose, the energy bolt stretching him backward like a slingshot before snapping him forward again, entirely unharmed. The stormtroopers froze mid-volley, training failing to account for targets that simply refused the laws of physics they'd been drilled to expect. "What in the stars?" the officer breathed, all his earlier confidence collapsing into raw, uncomprehending shock. "My turn," Luffy said, and vanished from where he stood. He reappeared behind the entire squad in less than a heartbeat, one stretched arm having launched him clean over their formation, and before a single trooper could turn to track the movement, his other arm had already coiled backward like a drawn bowstring. "Gomo Gomo no." The words left his mouth almost lazily, without malice, the tone of a boy more interested in stopping a fight than escalating one. Gatling. A blur of fists, dozens upon dozens of them, hammered into the squad's armor in the space of 2 seconds, the sound like hailstones on a tin roof. And when it ended, 8 stormtroopers lay scattered across the street in dented, smoking armor, weapons flung wide. Groaning, but Luffy had made sure, very much alive. He didn't kill people who were just following orders. He'd learned that lesson a long time ago. The officer stood alone amid his fallen squad, blaster shaking in his hand, staring at the boy in the straw hat with the particular terror of a man realizing he had grievously misjudged the threat in front of him. "You're not registered anywhere," he whispered. "What are you?" "I told you already," Luffy said, walking calmly back toward his crew. "I'm gonna be the Pirate King, and you really shouldn't shoot at people who are just trying to eat lunch." The officer's hand trembled toward the comm unit on his wrist, and before anyone could stop him, his voice cracked out across an open frequency. "This is Lieutenant Varn, requesting immediate reinforcement and inquisitorial consultation at Dre's Landing. We have encountered," he swallowed hard, searching for words that made sense of what he'd just witnessed, "an anomaly beyond standard threat classification. Repeat, requesting inquisitorial consultation immediately." Far above the canyon settlement, in orbit around the moon, that message rippled outward through secure Imperial channels, climbing steadily up a chain of command until it reached a listening post that rarely received such requests, and rarer still, acted on them so swiftly. Within the hour, a response would already be in motion, one that had nothing to do with ordinary garrison troops and everything to do with a hunter trained specifically to track down beings who defied the Empire's understanding of power itself. In the cantina shadows, the hooded figure who had been quietly observing since the confrontation with the cartel enforcers finally rose, tucking away their data slate, and slipped out through a side exit before the chaos in the street could draw attention their way. They had seen enough. It was time to send word to people who would want to know that something entirely new had arrived in the galaxy. Something that moved like nothing in the Jedi archives, nothing in the old Sith texts, nothing in any record the Inquisitorius had ever cataloged. The Straw Hats had survived their first true clash with the Empire without a single serious wound. But in doing so, they had just guaranteed that the galaxy's hunters, the ones who answered to darker, more patient masters than a single frightened lieutenant, now knew exactly where to look. The stormtroopers were still groaning in the dust when Kita reappeared at the mouth of an alley, waving urgently for the crew to follow. "Move now, before Sector Command sends something worse than a beat cop with a comm unit. Trust me, you do not want to be standing here when the next wave arrives." "We could just fight them too," Frankie said, cracking his knuckles with obvious enthusiasm. "You could," Kita agreed, already walking briskly down a side passage between 2 docking bays. "But every trooper you flatten is another report climbing the chain of command. And eventually that chain reaches people who don't send squads. They send inquisitors. You do not want an inquisitor's attention, not this early, not before you understand what you're dealing with." Nami fell into step beside her, quick to catch the shift in tone. "You keep saying that word like it's supposed to scare us." "It should." Kita's voice dropped lower as she led them through the maze of scrap metal alleys behind the main strip. Inquisitors hunt Force sensitives for the Empire, rogue Jedi, hidden younglings, anyone who might threaten Imperial control of that kind of power. They're vicious, they're fast, and they don't stop until the job's done. If Sector Command thinks whatever you are might be Force-related, they won't send troopers next time. They'll send one of them. Robin absorbed this information with a calm, methodical interest of a historian cataloging a new civilization. This force, it's some manner of mystical energy specific to this galaxy. Specific and dangerous, Kita confirmed. Some folks can sense it, move things with their mind, sense danger before it happens. The Empire hunts anyone who can and doesn't bow to them. Most Jedi are dead now. Most. The ones left are hiding, and hiding well. Zoro's jaw tightened at the phrase "sense danger" before it happens. It sounded uncomfortably close to observation hockey, which meant whatever this force was, it might overlap with the very sense he'd relied on since the alley behind the cantina had felt strangely muffled to him. "That might explain why my hockey's been acting up since we got here," he said quietly, more to Robin than anyone else. If this force thing works on a similar frequency, it'd make sense that the two would interfere with each other, like two radio signals overlapping. "An astute theory," Robin said, filing the observation away with the rest of the galaxy's growing list of mysteries. They emerged from the alley maze into a quieter district of Dre's Landing, a row of shuttered warehouses, and a cargo yard Kita clearly knew well, judging by the easy way she palmed open a side door without triggering whatever security system should have stopped her. "This is one of mine," she explained. "You can lay low here while the heat from the street fight dies down. But we need to talk business, because you lot just became the single most interesting thing to happen in this sector in years, and interesting draws money." Inside, stacked crates of unmarked cargo lined the walls, and Kita gestured for the crew to make themselves comfortable among them while she pulled up a battered holoprojector from her belt. "Here's the situation," she said, projecting a crude star map that flickered blue against the warehouse's dim interior. "This moon's under the thumb of a garrison that answers to Sector Command, which answers to the Empire proper. Every unregistered anomaly gets reported, every anomaly gets investigated. And you people are now officially the biggest anomaly this garrison's ever logged. That fight in the street? By now, it's already climbed 3 rungs up the chain. So what do we do?" Nami asked, already thinking several steps ahead in the way that had kept the crew alive through worse storms than this one. "You've got options," Kita said. 1. You keep your heads down. Let me help you quietly move whatever repairs your ship needs, and you slip out of this system before the Inquisitors arrive. 2. You make yourselves a target on purpose, which, given what I just watched you do to 4 cartel enforcers and a squad of troopers, seems to be your natural inclination. Or 3, she paused, studying them with renewed calculation. You use what you've got. There's a garrison holding a nearby farming settlement under an exploitative labor quota, taxing them into starvation to feed Imperial requisitions. If you're the kind of people who fed hungry kids on a scrapyard moon this morning, I'm guessing you might have opinions about that." Luffy, who had been half listening while eyeing a crate of unidentified alien snack rations with open curiosity, looked up sharply at the word starvation. "People are starving because of taxes?" "Imperial requisition quotas," Kita clarified. "The garrison commander here schemes extra off the top for himself, on top of what the Empire already demands. It's technically legal, in the sense that nobody with the power to stop it cares enough to try." Something dark and quiet moved behind Luffy's easy expression, the same shift that had come over him in front of the smuggler village, except sharper now, more focused. "Where's this settlement?" "Luffy," Nami said warningly, recognizing the tone immediately. "We just talked about keeping a low profile." "I know what we talked about," Luffy said, not unkindly, but with the immovable certainty that had defined every major decision of his captaincy. "But I'm not going to sit in a warehouse while some Imperial guy starves kids so he can line his own pockets. That's not who we are." Sanji exhaled a slow stream of cigarette smoke, unsurprised. "Didn't figure you would let that one go, Captain." "Course not." Kita studied Luffy for a long moment, reassessing whatever calculation she'd been running since the fight in the street. "You're serious. You'd actually risk drawing an inquisitor down on your heads over a garrison's tax quota on a settlement you've never even seen. We've done stupider things for worse reasons, Zoro said, already checking his blades. Better reasons, Usopp corrected miserably, though he was already resigned to whatever chaos was coming. Worse odds. Great combination as always. Kita laughed, short, surprised, genuine. Well, I did say interesting draws money. Turns out it also draws trouble looking for a fight worth having. All right, if you're actually going to do this, you'll want to know the garrison's layout, because walking in blind against Imperial defenses is a good way to turn a rescue into a body count. She pulled up a more detailed schematic on the holo projector. A walled compound a few hours' walk from Dre's Landing, squat guard towers, a central requisition depot, where the settlement's grain and water allotments were being stockpiled for Imperial transport rather than distributed to the people who'd grown and purified them. Nami leaned in, studying the layout with the sharp, practical eye of someone who had planned 100 heists and escapes across 100 different waters. If we hit the depot directly, we could redistribute the stockpile before the garrison even realizes what's happening. But that means getting past the guard towers without triggering an alarm that brings down half the sector on us. That's what I'm here for, Zoro said simply. That's what we're here for, Frankie corrected, grinning wide. Super plan, by the way. I like it already. Kita shook her head slowly, half amusement and half genuine disbelief, watching a crew of impossible outsiders casually plan an assault on an Imperial garrison less than a day after crash landing in a galaxy none of them understood. You people are either going to become legends in this sector, she said, or you're going to get yourselves killed spectacularly. Possibly both. Legends who don't die, Luffy said cheerfully, already halfway to the door. That's the plan. Behind them, unnoticed, the hooded figure who had slipped out of the cantina earlier had reached a quiet transmission relay hidden in the settlement's outskirts, keying in a secure frequency reserved for communications that very few people in this sector had clearance to send. This is Agent Rin Caslow, reporting an anomaly requiring immediate inquisitorial attention, the figure said quietly into the comm, watching the distant silhouette of the strange crew departing toward the garrison settlement. 9 unregistered life forms, abilities inconsistent with any known Force tradition or cybernetic augmentation. 1 individual demonstrated combat capability sufficient to incapacitate a full stormtrooper squad without lethal force unassisted, in under 3 seconds. Recommend immediate dispatch. This is not a garrison-level matter. The garrison compound rose out of the flat, cracked landscape like something built more to intimidate than to protect. Squat durasteel walls, twin guard towers bristling with scanner arrays, a landing pad on the eastern flank where a modest transport idled under the watch of 2 bored-looking troopers. Beyond the walls, visible through gaps in the perimeter fencing, lay the settlement itself. Rows of modest farming structures, irrigation lines running dry in the afternoon heat, and stockpiled grain silos sitting under heavy guard while thin, sun-weathered families watched from a distance, forbidden from touching what their own hands had grown. There, Nami said, crouched behind a rock outcropping a few hundred yards out. Scope pressed to her eye as she studied the compound's layout against the schematic Kita had provided. Central depots, the long building near the silos. That's where the requisition stockpiles being held before transport. 2 guard towers with clean sightlines on the approach. Patrol rotation every 12 minutes based on what I'm seeing. Cameras. Robin asked. Probably. This is a garrison, not a farm stand. Zoro rolled his shoulders, entirely unbothered by any of it. Doesn't matter how many cameras they've got if nobody's left standing to watch the footage. That's usually where things go wrong for us, Usopp muttered. Luffy, characteristically, was not interested in the finer points of tactical planning. He was staring at the settlement beyond the walls, jaw set, watching a small child try and fail to sneak past a guard toward the silo before being shoved roughly back by a trooper's rifle butt. That was all it took. I'm going in the front, he announced. Of course you are, Sanji sighed. Already field stripping and reassembling nothing in particular out of habit, a nervous tick from a man about to walk into a fight he'd rather have avoided entirely, if not for his captain's stubbornness. Try not to level the whole compound before we've got the grain moved, Would you? No promises. Nami rubbed her temples, but didn't argue further. There was no version of this plan that survived contact with Luffy's patience for injustice, and pretending otherwise would only waste time. Fine. Real plan. Frankie, Chopper, you're on the silo. The second the guards are distracted, get those doors open and start moving stockpile toward the settlement fence line so people can grab what they need fast. Robin, Brooke, you're covering the perimeter. Watch for reinforcements. Zoro, Sanji, you're with Luffy on the depot itself. Usopp and I take the guard towers. Why do I always get the tower with a guy who's definitely going to shoot at me? Usopp groaned. Because you're the only one who can hit a target from 400 yards without breaking form, and I need someone watching my back while I work the tower controls, Nami said. Also, complaining wastes daylight. The assault, when it came, was less a battle than a demonstration of overwhelming, almost gentle superiority. Zoro disabled the Eastern Watchtower's occupants with 3 precisely placed strikes of his sword's flat side before either guard could sound an alarm, dropping them unconscious into the dust without a scratch drawn. Sanji's legwork cleared the depot's outer checkpoint in a blur of controlled violence, sweeping for troopers off their feet before their blasters had fully cleared their holsters, each landing hard but breathing. Luffy went through the depot's main door like it wasn't there at all, rubber fist connecting with the reinforced durasteel and simply punching straight through, the frame buckling around the hole his arm had carved. Inside, 3 surprised troopers guarding the stockpile barely had time to raise their weapons before Luffy's Gatling put them down in a blur of motion too fast to properly track. None of it lethal, all of it thorough. Frankie and Chopper, meanwhile, made short work of the silo doors. Frankie's cybernetic strength tearing the locking mechanism apart with a satisfying shriek of metal. Chopper transforming into his hybrid form to help haul sacks of grain toward the fence line where settlement families were beginning to gather. Disbelief slowly giving way to desperate hope as they realized what was happening. Take it. All of it. Faster. Before more soldiers show up. Chopper called out, wrestling a sack nearly twice his size toward a young mother clutching 2 children close to her legs. The garrison commander, alerted by the sudden chaos, emerged from the compound's central building already shouting orders into his comm, summoning every available trooper toward the depot. He arrived just in time to watch his stockpile, the illegal skim he'd been quietly diverting for personal profit for the better part of a year, being handed freely to the very people he'd been starving to line his own pockets. Stop them. Stop them immediately, he bellowed, drawing his own sidearm with shaking hands. He never got the chance to fire it. Zoro's blade found the weapon before the commander's finger reached the trigger, sending it spinning harmlessly into the dust, and a moment later the man found himself staring up at Luffy's flat, unimpressed expression from the ground where a single shove had put him. You've been stealing food from people who are already starving, Luffy said, voice quiet in a way that was somehow more unsettling than shouting would have been. That's the kind of thing that makes me really mad. You don't understand, the commander stammered, scrambling backward through the dirt. Quotas, requisitions, I don't set imperial policy, the Empire demands. I don't care what the Empire demands, Luffy said. I care that kids over there haven't been eating right. Fix that, or we'll be back, and next time I won't be this nice about it. By the time reinforcements from a neighboring outpost arrived 20 minutes later, summoned by the commander's frantic distress call, they found an empty depot. A humiliated garrison commander tied to his own flagpole by 3 of Zoro's blades pinning his uniform in place without so much as breaking skin, and a settlement whose families had already dispersed the stockpiled grain far too widely to ever fully recover, hidden in cellars, buried under floorboards, distributed to neighboring farms. Before the Empire could reclaim a single sack of it, the Straw Hats were gone before the reinforcements' transport had even touched down, melting back into the canyon terrain with the same easy confidence that had carried them through 100 raids on corrupt officials and cruel warlords back home. To the settlers of that farming community, they left behind something more valuable than the grain itself. The sight of an empire's soldiers beaten without a single settler lifting a finger, proof that the iron grip they'd lived under for years was not, in fact, unbreakable. But that proof came with a cost. Somewhere in a moving star destroyer 3 sectors away, the incident report reached a terminal that flagged it with a priority marker reserved for genuine threats to Imperial control. Not petty theft, not smuggling, but organized resistance capable of neutralizing garrison forces without casualties, executed with a precision and restraint that suggested discipline rather than mere savagery. That kind of restraint in Imperial intelligence doctrine was often more dangerous than outright brutality. It suggested purpose, ideology, the beginnings of something that could spread. And spreading was precisely what the Empire could not afford. Not in a sector already simmering with quiet rebel sympathies waiting for a spark. The Straw Hats returned to Dre's landing by nightfall, ducking back through the canyon's shadowed side passages with the particular satisfaction of people who had just handed an Empire a black eye. Kita was waiting for them at the warehouse door, arms crossed, an expression somewhere between disbelief and reluctant admiration. "You actually did it," she said. Words already spreading through the settlement network. People are calling it the grain uprising. Half the farming communities in this sector are asking who you are and how they can get in touch. "We're not looking to start an uprising," Nami said quickly, though the words felt hollow even as she said them. "We just didn't like watching kids go hungry." "Doesn't matter what you were looking to start," Kita said. "That's what you started. Come on, you should see this before you get too comfortable." She led them to a public terminal near the cantina, one of the settlement's shared information boards where traders posted cargo manifests, job listings, and prominently displayed at the top of the feed, a freshly updated Imperial bounty notice. 9 faces, rough sketches based on eyewitness descriptions rather than actual scans, since none of the crew had ever been properly identified, stared out from the board under a single heading: Unregistered Anomaly Group, wanted for questioning. Reward for capture, living preferred. Living preferred, Usopp repeated, voice cracking. That's somehow worse than just wanted dead. That means Sector Command wants to study you, Kita said grimly. Figure out what you are, how you do what you do. Trust me, that's not a process you want to be conscious for. Luffy squinted at his own crude sketch, unbothered by the threat, but mildly offended by the artistry. This doesn't even look like me. My nose is way better than that. Focus, Captain, Sanji muttered. The bounty had already done its work, drawing eyes throughout the cantina toward the crew with newfound calculation. Not fear this time, but the specific hunger of bounty hunters recognizing a payday. 2 figures near the bar exchanged a glance and rose from their stools with deliberate casualness, drifting toward the exit as though to circle around for a better position. We've got company, Zoro murmured, already tracking the movement without turning his head. Not the kind we want, Robin added, noting a third figure adjusting a wrist-mounted device that looked distinctly like a tracking beacon rather than a comm unit. Before the situation could escalate into another street fight, a new voice cut through the tension, calm, measured, carrying just enough authority to make the circling bounty hunters hesitate. I wouldn't if I were you. Word is these 9 put down a full garrison squad without killing anyone. That bounty's not worth what you'll lose trying to collect it. The speaker was a woman in worn traveler's clothes that did little to disguise the disciplined economy of her movements. Seated alone at a corner table, with a data slate she hadn't looked up from until now. She rose smoothly, meeting Luffy's curious gaze with a direct, evaluating look of someone who had spent years assessing potential allies in dangerous rooms. Name's Miraset, she said. I represent people who might have a proposition for you, if you're willing to hear it out somewhere a little more private than a cantina with a fresh bounty on the board. Nami's instincts, honed by years of reading dangerous strangers, immediately sharpened. What kind of people? The kind fighting the same empire you just embarrassed, Mira said simply. I saw the requisition depot footage before Imperial censors managed to bury it. 9 outsiders neutralizing an entire garrison detachment without a single fatality, then redistributing stolen grain to a starving settlement. That's not just impressive. That's exactly the kind of story that spreads through occupied systems like wildfire, and stories like that are worth more to us than any weapon cache. You're with the rebellion, Robin said, not a question, simply a conclusion arrived at with characteristic precision. Myra's slight, controlled smile confirmed it, without a single word wasted on denial. Luffy's expression shifted into the sharp attentiveness that came whenever a conversation touched on things he actually cared about, not politics, not factions, but the shape of a fight worth understanding. What's the rebellion fighting for? Freedom, Mira said simply. From an empire that taxes worlds into starvation, executes dissent without trial, and crushes anything it can't control. We're outgunned, outnumbered, and most days it feels like we're losing. But every world we free, every garrison we humiliate the way you did today, that's a spark. And sparks add up. It was a pitch calculated, Nami suspected, with real skill, appealing directly to the instinct that had driven Luffy to storm that garrison in the first place, framing the rebellion's cause in terms simple, and just enough that a boy who fought for straightforward reasons might find compelling. "So you want us to join you?" Luffy said. "I want to talk," Mira corrected carefully. "Understand what you are, what you can do, and whether there's a way to work together that serves both our interests. I'm not asking for blind loyalty. I know better than to expect that from people who don't even come from this galaxy." Zoro's arms remained crossed, expression unreadable. "And if we say the rebellion's fight isn't our fight, then I thank you for your time and wish you luck evading Imperial bounty hunters on your own," Mira said, without a trace of resentment. "I'm not here to strong-arm anyone. I've seen what happens to causes built on coerced allies. It doesn't end well for anyone involved." That honesty, more than any grand appeal to justice, seemed to register with the crew, a refreshing absence of the manipulation they'd grown wary of after years spent navigating the schemes of warlords and world government officials alike. "We'll think about it," Nami said carefully, unwilling to commit her captain to anything without more information. "But we're not making promises tonight." "Fair enough," Mira said, sliding a small data chip across the table toward Robin, who accepted it with the same careful neutrality she brought to every unknown artifact. "Secure frequency if you want to reach me. Take your time deciding. But I'd think fast. Sector Command doesn't sit on anomalies like you for long, and my sources say they've already put in a request for inquisitorial consultation. If that request gets approved, the decision about who you align with might get made for you, one way or another." She rose, tucking her data slate away, and slipped out of the cantina with the same unhurried confidence with which she'd entered, leaving the Straw Hats to sit with an offer that none of them had expected to receive less than a full day after arriving in this galaxy. "An Inquisitor," Usopp repeated nervously. "Everyone keeps bringing those up like they're the scariest thing in the sector. I really don't want to find out firsthand why." He would not have long to wait. Night had settled fully over Dre's landing by the time the crew made their way back toward the outskirts where the Thousand Sunny sat under its makeshift camouflage, the canyon's twin moons casting pale light across the dust. Zoro walked to the rear of the group, senses still faintly muffled by the ambient hum of this galaxy's strange energy field, but sharpening now, adapting the way his instincts always did after enough exposure to a new threat. That was why he felt it before anyone else did, a presence, cold and precise, cutting through the force's ambient static like a blade through fog. It didn't announce itself with footsteps or shadow. It simply arrived, settling into the edge of his awareness with the particular weight of something that had killed before and intended to again. "Someone's here," he said quietly, stopping mid-stride. "Not cartel, not garrison, something else." The others fell still, instincts honed by years of danger picking up on Zoro's certainty, even without the sense to confirm it themselves. Robin's eyes swept the rooftops and shadowed alleys around them. "I don't see anyone." "Doesn't mean they're not there," Zoro said, hand already resting on Wado Ikamanji's hilt. A figure dropped from the rooftop of a nearby warehouse without a sound, landing in a crouch that absorbed the impact of what should have been a bone-shattering fall, and rose slowly into the moonlight, tall, draped in dark robes over segmented black armor, a hood shadowing a face marked with pale, geometric tattoos, and at their hip, a cylindrical hilt that hummed faintly with contained energy. "The Anomaly Group," the figure said, voice flat and utterly without warmth. 9 unregistered life forms, one capable of disarming a squad of stormtroopers without lethal force. One who moves faster than a trained duelist should be able to track. Her eyes settled on Zoro with unnerving precision. You specifically. I felt you sensing me before I even revealed myself. That is unexpected. You're the Inquisitor, Nami said, voice tight. Inquisitor Thesvale, the figure confirmed, drawing the cylindrical hilt from her belt with unhurried ceremony. A blade of crackling crimson energy snapped to life with a sound like tearing fabric, casting harsh red light across the alley. Sector Command sent me to determine what you are. Force-sensitive rogues, hidden Jedi remnants, or something Imperial classification has no category for yet. I find I am inclined toward the third option. Luffy stepped forward, entirely unbothered by the glowing blade, studying it with the same open curiosity he'd shown the blaster earlier that day. That's a cool sword. What's it made of? It is not a sword, Vale said, something almost like offense flickering across her otherwise controlled expression. It is a lightsaber, and you would be wise to fear it. I don't really fear weapons, Luffy said. Just people. And you don't seem all that scary yet. Vale's jaw tightened fractionally, the first genuine crack in her composed menace. That confidence will not survive contact with the Force. Zoro stepped forward, blocking Luffy's path with the easy authority of a first mate who had learned exactly when his captain needed to hang back. He's not your opponent tonight, he said. I am. That energy I felt, that's coming off your blade, isn't it? Feels like it's fighting against something. Against you, maybe. Something in Vale's expression shifted, a flicker of genuine surprise breaking through years of inquisitorial discipline. You can sense the Force radiating from a lightsaber. That is not a common sensitivity, even among trained Jedi. Don't know anything about your Force, Zoro said, drawing all three of his blades in one smooth motion, mist gathering faintly around him as he settled into stance. I know hockey, and I know a fight when I see one starting. Then let us see whose discipline runs deeper. Vale moved first, closing the distance in a blur that would have overwhelmed any ordinary duelist. Crimson blade arcing toward Zoro's shoulder in a strike meant to end the confrontation in a single stroke. Zoro's blade met it head-on, steel meeting energy in a shower of sparks and a shriek of resistance neither combatant had expected. His sword should have been sliced clean through by a blade capable of cutting durasteel, and yet it held, hockey-infused steel proving far more resilient than any material Vale had faced in her years of hunting. Impossible, she breathed, disengaging and circling with renewed wariness. You keep saying that word, Zoro said. Might want to update your expectations. The duel that followed was unlike anything either combatant had experienced. Vale fought with a fluid, almost preternatural grace of someone whose every movement was informed by a precognitive sense of her opponent's intentions. Except that sense kept faltering against Zoro, his hockey-muffled presence creating gaps and uncertainties in her foresight that she had never had to compensate for before. Meanwhile, Zoro found his own observation hockey sharpening rapidly under pressure, the fogged unfamiliarity of this galaxy's ambient energy burning away in the heat of genuine combat, until he could read the telltale shift in her shoulders and eyes that preceded each strike a fraction of a second before it came. Blade met blade a dozen times in the span of a minute, the alley lit in flickering crimson and echoing with the ring of steel against something that should have cut through it effortlessly. Vale pressed her advantage with increasingly desperate speed, drawing on the Force to augment her strikes, and for the first time Zoro felt real resistance, not defeat, but a challenge sharp enough to demand everything he had. Santoriu, he murmured, shifting his stance, the third blade rising to his mouth. Guess I should stop holding back. What followed was a single decisive exchange, Vale's blade driving forward in a strike meant to finally break through his guard, and Zoro's three swords converging in a spinning arc that met her attack from three directions simultaneously. The lightsaber was wrenched from her grip and sent clattering into the dust, sputtering out as it struck stone, and Vale found herself staring down the flat of Zoro's blade held a hair's breadth from her throat. Silence fell over the alley, broken only by the ragged edge of Vale's breathing. You could kill me, she said, quiet and controlled despite the blade at her neck. Most in your position would. I don't kill people who aren't trying to kill someone weaker than them, Zoro said, sheathing his blades and stepping back. You lost. That's enough. Vale rose slowly, retrieving her extinguished lightsaber with trembling hands, staring at Zoro with an expression that had shifted from predatory confidence into something far more complicated. The particular disorientation of a hunter forced to reconsider everything she believed about her own supremacy. Sector Command will not be satisfied with my failure. They will send more. Perhaps an Inquisitor stronger than I am. Perhaps something worse. Then we'll deal with that when it happens, Zoro said, unbothered. She studied him a moment longer, then Luffy, then the rest of the crew watching with varying degrees of readiness behind him, and made a decision that would have shocked her superiors had they witnessed it. I'm not going to report the full extent of what I witnessed tonight, she said slowly. I will confirm your threat classification. I will not confirm that a swordsman defeated me in single combat without killing me. Some things are better left unconfirmed. Why? Robin asked, genuinely curious. Vale's answer was quiet, almost bitter. Because the Empire does not reward Inquisitors who lose. It replaces them. And I find tonight that I am not yet ready to be replaced. She vanished back into the shadows of the rooftops as swiftly as she had arrived, leaving the Straw Hats alone in the alley with the fading red afterglow of a duel that had nearly ended in tragedy. Well, Frankie said into the silence that followed. That was tense. She'll be back, Zoro said, sheathing his final blade. People like that don't just walk away clean. Not from a loss like that. Somewhere above them, in the black expanse of space, a Star Destroyer sensor logs quietly recorded an energy spike from Vale's lightsaber consistent with combat engagement. Data that would eventually reach Sector Command regardless of what its Inquisitor chose to report, setting in motion consequences none of the Straw Hats could yet anticipate. Word of the Inquisitor's defeat did not spread through official channels. Vale's silence on the matter of her loss saw to that, but it spread nonetheless, whispered in cantinas and cargo bays and settlement kitchens across the sector, the story growing with each retelling until it barely resembled the truth. A garrison humiliated without a shot fired. An Inquisitor's saber extinguished. A boy who couldn't be shot and a swordsman faster than sight. Within 2 days, the Straw Hats had gone from an anomaly on a sensor report to something dangerously close to legend. Legend, unfortunately, drew more attention than a simple bounty ever could. Multiple squads inbound, Robin reported, perched atop a warehouse roof with a stolen scanner she'd lifted from a garrison outpost, watching heat signatures converge on Dre's landing from 3 separate directions. Not garrison troops this time. Heavier armor, coordinated formation. They're not messing around anymore, Nami said grimly, joining her on the rooftop to study the approaching signatures. That's a containment sweep. They're trying to box us in. Down in the settlement below, the crew scattered to gather supplies and settle accounts before the Sunny could be readied for departure. But the Empire's patience for half measures had clearly run out. By the time Luffy and Sanji made it back toward the warehouse district, the streets had already filled with white-armored troopers moving in disciplined formation, sealing off exits with the mechanical precision of a net closing around its catch. There's a lot more of them than last time, Sanji observed, flicking ash from his cigarette with deceptive calm. Guess they learned something, Luffy said, though his tone carried no real concern. What the garrison commander overseeing this sweep hadn't learned, hadn't had time to learn, given how quickly events had escalated beyond his experience, was precisely what kind of storm he was attempting to contain. He watched from a command platform as his forces converged on the warehouse district from all sides. 3 full squads backed by a pair of light walker units, more firepower than had ever been deployed against a single anomaly report in this sector's history. All units converge and detain, he ordered into his comm, sweat beating despite the cool night air. Non-lethal where possible, but authorize lethal force if resistance escalates beyond containment. The trap closed around a narrow warehouse alley where Luffy, Sanji, Zoro, and Chopper found themselves boxed in by troopers on both ends, blaster fire lighting up the darkness in crisscrossing volleys that none of them had any intention of standing still for. This is annoying, Zoro muttered, deflecting a bolt with the flat of his blade. They're not going to stop, Luffy observed, watching wave after wave of reinforcements pour into position around them. The 2 walker units lumbering into the alley's mouth with cannons already charging. They're really scared of us now." "Good," Sanji said, sweeping aside a cluster of bolts aimed at Chopper with a precise kick. Scared people make mistakes. But scared people, Luffy understood in a way that ran deeper than tactics, also made desperate ones, and desperate commanders, backed into a corner with their careers and possibly their lives on the line for failing to contain an Imperial priority target, tended to escalate past the point of reason. The Walker unit's cannons swung toward the alley's cramped confines, indifferent to the fact that a direct hit in such close quarters would likely kill their own advancing troopers alongside their target. That recklessness, that willingness to sacrifice anything for the appearance of control, was exactly the kind of injustice that had always, in every ocean Luffy had ever sailed, pushed him past restraint and into something the world remembered for a very long time. He felt it building the way he always did before it happened, a pressure rising from somewhere beneath conscious thought, ancient and vast, the accumulated weight of a will that refused, absolutely and completely, to be broken by anyone claiming dominion over people who deserved better. It was not anger, exactly. It was certainty, the kind of certainty that came from being born to make the world listen. "Everyone," he said quietly, and something in his voice made even Zoro pause mid-strike. "Get back." What happened next did not register, at first, as an attack at all. There was no blow thrown, no weapon drawn. There was simply Luffy, standing in the center of the alley with his head bowed. And then there was a wave of pure, invisible will crashing outward from him in every direction at once. A pressure so absolute that every trooper in the alley, every trooper on the Walker platforms, every soldier within 100 meters simply stopped. Weapons falling from suddenly nerveless hands, knees buckling beneath a force none of their training had ever prepared them to withstand. Conqueror's Haki did not discriminate between armor and flesh. It did not care about blast shields or combat stims, or the disciplined conditioning of Imperial military training. It reached directly for the will beneath all of it. And in the space of a single heartbeat, over 60 soldiers collapsed unconscious across the warehouse district, weapons clattering uselessly against durasteel, the two towering Walker units grinding to a halt as their pilots slumped forward against their controls. The garrison commander, watching from his platform a safe distance away, felt the edge of that wave wash over him even at range, not enough to render him unconscious, but enough to drop him to his knees, gasping, every instinct in his body screaming at him to run from something his mind could not begin to categorize. Silence fell over Dre's landing, broken only by the soft creak of settling Walker armor and the distant hum of the Sunny's engines beginning to warm in preparation for departure. Zoro let out a low whistle, surveying the field of unconscious soldiers stretching in every direction. Forgot how much of a mess that makes. "Everyone's fine," Luffy said, already straightening, the terrifying pressure gone from him as quickly as it had arrived, replaced by his usual easy grin. "Just sleeping. Come on, let's get back to the ship before more show up." But far above, in the cold silence of a Star Destroyer's bridge, a duty officer stared at the sensor readout that had just registered an unprecedented, unclassifiable energy pulse originating from the warehouse district. A pulse that had, impossibly, simultaneously incapacitated over 60 Imperial personnel without a single blaster bolt fired. "Sir," the officer said, of the voice tight incident, with a fear that had nothing to do with the rebellion, scrambling for the Sunny, "I think we need to reclassify the chaos this anomaly." Created. Immediately, but the reprieve didn't last long. By the time they cleared the canyon's outer ridge, Mira's set was waiting for them at a prearranged rendezvous point, her expression tighter than it had been in the cantina 2 nights before. "You collapsed an entire garrison sweep without a single shot fired," she said, falling into step alongside Nami as the crew hurried toward the ship. "Sector Command is calling it a force-based mass incapacitation event. That's not a rumor anymore. That's a Priority 1 flag going up every chain of command in this sector." "We didn't have much choice," Nami said. They were about to open cannon fire in a crowded street. "I believe you," Mira said, "but belief doesn't slow down what's coming. Which is why I'm here. My superiors want to move up the timeline. There's a strike planned against an Imperial Supply Convoy 2 systems over. Resources that would keep 3 separate rebel cells fed and armed through the next quarter. We could use exactly the kind of unpredictable firepower you've just demonstrated. Luffy, walking a few paces ahead, slowed enough to catch the tail end of the conversation. "What's the plan?" Mira hesitated, and that hesitation told Nami everything she needed to know before the words even left the rebel operative's mouth. The convoy route runs through a populated transfer station. There's a chance, not a certainty, but a real chance, that an all-out assault draws Imperial retaliation against the station's civilian population afterward, as a warning to anyone else who might consider similar strikes. My superiors have judged the resource gain worth that risk. The alley fell quiet. Even Zoro, who rarely weighed in on matters beyond his blade, felt the shift in the air before Luffy spoke again. "So your plan is to maybe get those people killed afterward on purpose, because it's worth it to you," Luffy said. Not a question, a flat statement, weighed and found wanting. "It's not that simple," Mira said, and to her credit, she didn't flinch from the accusation. "War never is. Every choice we make trades someone's safety for someone else's. I don't like it any more than you do. But if we don't hit that convoy, worlds under Imperial blockade starve slower instead of faster. That's the arithmetic we live with." "I don't do that kind of arithmetic," Luffy said. "If the plan means people might get hurt because it's convenient, I'm not part of the plan." "Luffy," Nami started, caught between respecting her captain's line and understanding the genuine desperation behind Mira's request. "No," Luffy said, and there was no anger in it, only the same unshakable certainty that had carried him through every crew of the Grand Line. "I fight people who hurt others. I don't gamble with people I'm supposed to be protecting. That's not what we do." Mira absorbed the refusal with the weary grace of someone who had heard variations of it before, from allies and idealists who hadn't yet learned to carry the weight she carried daily. "I understand," she said quietly. "I won't pretend I'm not disappointed. We could have used you. But I respect a line when I see one drawn honestly." She paused, studying Luffy with something that might have been reluctant admiration. "For what's worth, I hope you're right. An idealism like yours survives contact with this galaxy longer than mine did." "It usually does," Sanji said, exhaling smoke. "He's stubborn like that." "Then I won't waste more of your time," Mira said, turning to go, though she paused at the alley's edge. "One thing before I leave. Whatever you decide to do next, whoever you decide to become in this galaxy, word of what happened tonight is already spreading faster than Sector Command can suppress it. You didn't just embarrass a garrison anymore. You've become a symbol, whether you wanted to or not. People are going to look to you now. Choose carefully what you want them to see." She vanished into the darkness before Luffy could respond, leaving the crew alone with the weight of a choice that had, without any of them quite realizing it, already begun reshaping how an entire sector understood the possibility of resistance. Robin was the first to break the silence that followed. "She wasn't wrong, you understand. About becoming a symbol. That kind of reputation carries consequences neither the Empire nor the Rebellion will let go unaddressed." "Let them address it," Luffy said, already walking again, the matter settled in his mind the way most things were once he'd made a decision. "I'm not going to change what I do because people are watching. I never have." "No," Robin agreed, a faint smile touching her lips as she fell into step beside him. "You never have." Behind them, unseen in the darkness of a nearby rooftop, Miraset lingered a moment longer than she'd let on, watching the strange crew disappear back toward their ship, and allowed herself, for just a moment, the small and dangerous luxury of hope. The particular hope that came from encountering something rarer than firepower in a galaxy this exhausted by war. People who still believed some lines were worth holding, no matter the cost of holding them. It was a hope she intended to report faithfully to her superiors, unedited, even knowing it would frustrate commanders who valued strategic assets over stubborn principles. Some things, she had decided somewhere in that alley, mattered more than winning. The Sunny had relocated 3 systems over in the days following the confrontation at Dre's Landing, tucked into a quiet nebula field Kita had recommended as a place invisible to standard Imperial patrol routes, giving the crew a rare stretch of breathing room to regroup. It was there, sorting through salvage data cores Robin had lifted from the garrison depot before their retreat, that she found something that would reshape everything the crew thought they understood about this galaxy. "Luffy, you should see this," Robin called from the library nook she'd claimed in the Sunny's lower deck, surrounded by stacks of data slates and a hollow projector casting flickering blue light across her intent expression. Luffy wandered over with a mouth full of meat, peering at the projected images with a mild curiosity he brought to most things that weren't immediate fights. "What is it?" "Fragments of an old Jedi archive," Robin said, "recovered from a garrison database that shouldn't have had access to material this old. Someone in that command structure was hoarding forbidden knowledge, likely for personal study or blackmail material. Most of it is standard Jedi philosophy, meditation techniques, lightsaber forms, historical records of the Old Republic. But this section is different." She gestured, and the hollow projector shifted to display a passage of ancient, angular script alongside a rough translation, the text fragmented and clearly incomplete, the kind of document that had survived centuries of copying and recopying with pieces lost along the way. "In the epochs before the Republic's founding," Robin read aloud, translating as she went, "certain orders among the earliest Force traditions spoke of a second current running parallel to the Force itself, not born of midi-chlorians, not drawn from the mystical field that binds this galaxy, but forged instead from will alone. The old texts called it by many names across many worlds, but the Zabrak mystics of Iridonia's first temples named it Rinkal, the unbent will. They believed it to be a distant cousin of the Force, born on some far shore beyond the galaxy's reach, sharing its root but not its source." Luffy stopped chewing. "Will alone? Like, not magic, just deciding something hard enough." "That's precisely what makes this fascinating," Robin said, scrolling further through the fragment. The text goes on to describe practitioners of this Rinkal as capable of imposing their intention directly onto others without any mystical conduit at all, collapsing an opponent's resolve, reading danger through raw perception rather than precognition, hardening their bodies against harm through sheer force of will rather than any force technique. The ancient Jedi who documented this considered it either a myth, a corrupted offshoot of the Force they didn't fully understand, or, and this is the theory the text seems to favor, evidence that the Force itself was never unique to this galaxy at all, merely one expression of something far larger. Sanji had wandered over by now, leaning against the doorframe with a fresh cigarette unlit between his fingers, listening with the same quiet attention he gave any conversation that might affect his captain. "You're saying this Rinkal thing sounds a lot like hockey." "I'm saying the description is difficult to interpret as anything else," Robin said, Zoro's observation reading danger and intent without any mystical explanation. Armament hardening the body against harm through will rather than technique. And what Luffy did in that alley. An entire squad's resolve collapsing under nothing but the pressure of his intention. She looked up, meeting Luffy's eyes with genuine scholarly excitement rarely permitted room to surface amid their usual chaos. "That's not a power this galaxy invented. According to this fragment, ancient Jedi scholars suspected something like it might exist beyond the Force's known reach entirely. And here you are, living proof of exactly what they theorized but never confirmed." Zoro, drawn by the conversation's drift toward something that actually interested him, folded his arms and leaned against a support beam. "So the reason my hockey felt muffled when we first got here, that's this Force stuff overlapping with it. Like static between two signals that come from close enough branches of the same tree to interfere with each other, but not close enough to actually be the same thing." "That would be my working theory," Robin confirmed, "which would also explain why Vale's ability to read your intent through the Force failed so completely during your duel. She wasn't fighting someone whose presence in the Force was simply faint or well hidden, the way a disciplined Jedi's might be. She was fighting someone operating on an entirely different current that her senses had no framework for interpreting at all." "Ah," Luffy said, processing this with the particular expression he wore when a puzzle interested him more than usual. "So hockey's not magic here. It's just hockey. But this whole galaxy runs on something that's kind of like it, kind of not." "In essence, yes." Chopper, who had drifted over sometime during the explanation, clutching a data slate of his own, raised a trembling hoof. "Does that mean the Force could hurt us differently than we're used to? Like, could someone actually use it against hockey specifically, the way regular attacks can't touch us? It was a question that settled uncomfortably over the small gathered group, and Robin considered it with the same careful rigor she brought to any genuine unknown. The fragment doesn't say definitively, but if the two currents share a root, as the ancient text theorizes, it stands to reason that a sufficiently powerful practitioner of the Force might find ways to interact with Haki that ordinary weapons cannot. Vale's blade cutting through my armament-reinforced arm would likely prove far more dangerous than a standard vibroblade, for instance. Closer kin cuts deeper, in theories like these. Good to know, Zoro said grimly, filing the information away with the same seriousness he applied to any genuine threat assessment. So if we run into something stronger than that Inquisitor, we can't assume we're as untouchable as we've been so far. A fair assumption to carry forward, Robin agreed. Nami had joined the conversation by this point, arms crossed, mind already working through the strategic implications the way it always did when new information touched on the crew's survival. This also means the Empire, or worse, the Sith, if the old texts are talking about people who lean toward this dark side thing, might eventually figure out how to properly counter what we do. Right now, we're an unknown quantity. That won't last. Then we adapt before that happens, Robin said simply. Knowledge is armor in circumstances like these. I intend to keep searching what remains of this archive. There may be more fragments describing this Runkal tradition, perhaps even techniques the old Jedi scholars developed specifically to counter or work alongside it. Luffy, who had listened to the entire exchange with more patience than he usually mustered for anything that didn't involve a fight or a meal, finally grinned. The earlier gravity of the conversation rolling off him the way threats to himself always did, replaced by simple, genuine fascination. So this whole galaxy's basically got a weaker, weirder cousin of Haki running through everything. That's actually pretty cool. Means we're not as out of place here as everyone keeps acting like we are. Perhaps not, Robin said, a faint, thoughtful smile touching her lips as she returned her attention to the ancient, fragmented text glowing softly before her. Though I suspect proving that theory correct, in the eyes of this galaxy's power structures, will prove considerably more dangerous than simply discussing it here in the safety of our own ship. Outside the viewport, the nebulous-colored gases drifted in silent, beautiful indifference to the conversation unfolding within the Sunny's hull. Indifferent, too, to the fact that word of an ancient theory long dismissed as myth by the Jedi Order was about to become terrifyingly, undeniably relevant to a galaxy that had assumed the Force's dominion in this galaxy and power as in any other, absolute tended to and be unchallenged. It was Frankie who noticed the trap first, not through any tactical instinct, but because the distress signal that reached the Sunny's comm array 3 days after Robin's discovery in the archive simply felt wrong from the moment it crackled through the speakers. This is Elder Tamsin Voro, broadcasting from Kesselite Village, requesting any available assistance. Imperial forces have occupied our settlement and are holding our people. Please, if anyone can hear this, we have children here. We need help. The transmission repeated on a loop, garbled by static and the particular desperate cadence of someone speaking under duress. Nami frowned at the comm panel, arms crossed. That came in on the same frequency Mira gave us before she left. Rebellion adjacent channel, which means either the rebellion's routing genuine distress calls our way now that we've made our position clear, Robin said slowly, studying the signal's metadata with a scholar's suspicion, or someone who knows we're monitoring that frequency wants us to believe that. Luffy, predictably, was already moving toward the cockpit before the conversation had finished. Doesn't matter which one it is. There's kids in trouble. We're going. Luffy. Zoro's voice carried enough weight to actually slow his captain's stride, which was rare enough that everyone in the room paused to listen. Robin's right to be careful. We just got beaten by an empire that didn't know what we could do. Now they do. If this is a trap built specifically to catch us, walking in blind is exactly what they'd want. Then we don't walk in blind, Luffy said. We walk in ready. Same thing, different word. It was, Nami reflected with the particular exhaustion of someone who had crewed under this captain for years, a distinction that mattered enormously to Luffy and approximately nothing to the tactical realities of what they might be facing. But there was no version of this conversation that ended with the crew ignoring a distress call involving children, trap or not, and everyone present knew it well enough not to waste further breath arguing the point. "Fine," Nami said instead, already pulling up what navigational data they had on Kesselite Village. "But we go in with a plan this time. Robin, Brooke, you scout ahead before the rest of us commit. If it smells wrong, we pull back and rethink." The village, when the Sunny shuttle set down at its outskirts under cover of pre-dawn darkness, looked exactly as advertised. Modest agricultural structures, a scattering of frightened-looking residents visible through windows, a handful of Imperial transport vehicles parked with deliberate visibility near the settlement's central square. Robin and Brooke moved through the shadows toward the village's edge, senses alert for the wrongness that experience had taught every member of this crew to trust. It was Brooke, surprisingly, who found the flaw first, his skeletal senses, dulled to fear of death by his own peculiar condition, but sharp in other ways, picking up something the living members of the crew might have missed. "The residents in that window," he murmured to Robin, nodding toward a cluster of villagers watching from behind glass. "They haven't moved in several minutes. Not once. Not even to shift their weight." Robin's eyes narrowed, studying the tableau with fresh suspicion. Holographic projection, or droids dressed to resemble villagers. Either way, we're looking at a stage scene, not a genuine occupation. "Should we warn the others?" "We should," Robin agreed, already turning back toward the shuttle. But the moment came a fraction too late. Across the village square, camouflaged Imperial gun emplacements that had been disguised as harmless agricultural equipment rotated into position with mechanical precision, and from the shadows of what had appeared to be an abandoned storage building, 3 full squads of stormtroopers emerged in perfect, practiced formation, weapons already trained on the shuttle's landing site. At the formation center walked a figure the crew hadn't yet encountered, an officer in the black uniform of Imperial intelligence rather than standard military gray, flanked by 2 more Inquisitors, their lightsaber hilts held with the confident ease of people who had come specifically prepared for exactly this confrontation. "Colonel Eris Thane," the officer announced, voice carrying across the square through an amplification device built into his collar. "And I owe you all a debt of gratitude, actually." Inquisitor Vale's failure to properly report her engagement raised enough red flags in her performance metrics that Sector Command authorized a full intelligence workup on your group. Distress calls on frequencies you were already monitoring. Time to a moment when your crew would be spread across a scouting formation rather than gathered as one unit. Really, you made this remarkably easy. Luffy, midway through disembarking the shuttle alongside Sanji and Chopper, took in the ambush with the flat, assessing comm that had carried him through worse traps in worse oceans. "You used fake villagers to lure us here." "I used your own compassion against you," Thane corrected, something almost gleeful in his tone. "A far more reliable weapon than any blaster, as it turns out. Your crew has quite the reputation for rushing toward anyone claiming to need help. Predictable patterns make for effective traps, Captain." The 2 Inquisitors stepped forward in unison, and this time there was no hesitation in their bearing, no uncertainty like Vale had shown in that first alley encounter. These 2 had clearly studied every scrap of intelligence gathered on the crew's abilities, and they moved with the confidence of hunters who believe themselves properly prepared. "Where's the rest of your crew?" Sanji asked quietly, already scanning the square for Zoro, Nami, and Frankie, who had been approaching from the settlement's opposite flank when the trap sprang. The answer came in the form of a second wave of stormtroopers converging from the western tree line, cutting off any straightforward route to reunite the group, precisely as Thane's carefully constructed plan had intended. The Straw Hats, for the first time since their arrival in this galaxy, found themselves genuinely divided, outnumbered, and facing opponents who had come with real preparation rather than overconfidence. "They planned this well," Robin observed grimly from her position near the village's edge, watching the trap close with the cold clarity of someone assessing a genuinely dangerous situation rather than another skirmish easily won. "Then we'll just have to be better than their plan," Luffy said, cracking his knuckles, the earlier lightness gone from his voice entirely, replaced by something harder, more focused, the particular readiness that had carried him through battles against forces that made a colonel and 2 inquisitors look almost quaint by comparison. Sanji, Chopper, we're getting to the others. Nobody in this village gets hurt because of us. Not the real ones, if there are any left standing between us and them. Fane's smile didn't waver, confident in the numbers and preparation arrayed against them. Bold words for someone about to learn precisely why the Empire doesn't lose the battle at Kesselite Village. Broke across 3 fronts at once. And the first shots of the battle no time closing the distance, lit up the pre-dawn darkness, and his 2 inquisitors, a heartbeat later, moving in a blur of stretched limbs that scattered the first wave of stormtroopers like leaves before a gale. Sanji peeled off toward the western tree line, where Zoro, Nami, and Frankie had been cut off, his leg already trailing after images, as he cleared a path through the encroaching squad with brutal efficiency. The 2 inquisitors moved to intercept Luffy in perfect coordination, lightsabers igniting in twin arcs of violet and crimson, their approach measured and disciplined in a way that told him immediately these 2 had trained specifically to counter whatever intelligence reports had described about his abilities. Goma Goma no pistol. Luffy's fist rocketed forward, and the violet-bladed Inquisitor sidestepped with fluid precision, blade flashing toward the extended arm in a strike clearly meant to sever rubber flesh before it could retract. It should have worked. Luffy's arm, stretched and vulnerable mid-strike, presented exactly the kind of opening a trained duelist would exploit without hesitation. But the blade passed through empty air a half-second too late. Luffy's observation haki, sharpened now by days of exposure to this galaxy's strange ambient energy, reading the intended cut before it fully committed, allowing him to snap his arm back at the precise angle needed to avoid the strike entirely. "He's reading our intent," the crimson-bladed Inquisitor snarled, falling back a step. Reports said he might. "Coordinate approach, don't telegraph." They adjusted immediately, moving with less predictable rhythm. Feints layered over feints in a way clearly designed to overload even haki-sharpened perception. It was, Luffy had to admit, even as he ducked and weaved through their coordinated assault, considerably harder than fighting a single overconfident Inquisitor alone in an alley. These 2 had learned. That more than anything, told him this fight mattered in ways the earlier skirmishes hadn't. Elsewhere, Sanji had cleared enough of a path to reach Zoro, who had already dispatched a dozen troopers without drawing a killing blow, expression tight with a particular focus he reserved for genuinely dangerous situations. "Took you long enough," Zoro said, deflecting a bolt without looking. "Had my own crowd to deal with," Sanji shot back, sweeping 3 more troopers off their feet in a single spinning kick. "Where's Nami and the others?" "Frankie's got Nami covered near the granary. We need to regroup with Luffy. Those 2 Inquisitors aren't playing around." They cut through the remaining troopers with brutal efficiency, years of fighting together lending their movements an economy that no amount of Imperial coordination could easily match, and reached the village square just as Luffy's fight reached its critical turn. The violet-bladed Inquisitor had found an opening at last, her blade catching Luffy's shoulder in a glancing cut that, had it landed a fraction deeper, would have taken the arm entirely. Luffy staggered back, staring at the shallow wound with genuine surprise. Not pain, exactly, but the specific disorientation of an injury that shouldn't have been possible against his rubber physiology. Robin's warning about closer kin, cutting deeper, flashed through his memory with sudden, unwelcome clarity. "That actually hurt," he said, more curious than concerned, pressing a hand to the wound. "It will hurt considerably more before this concludes," the crimson-bladed Inquisitor said, pressing the advantage while her partner circled to flank. It was Thane, watching from a safe distance with cold satisfaction, who made the mistake that would define the battle's outcome. Confident in his Inquisitor's progress, he gestured toward a nearby structure, the granary where several real, uninvolved villagers had taken shelter during the chaos. Ordinary farmers with no connection to the crew's arrival, terrified bystanders caught in a trap that had never been about them at all. "Burn it," Thane ordered a nearby trooper squad, voice carrying easily across the square. "If the anomaly group refuses to yield, perhaps a demonstration of consequence will change their calculus." The words reached Luffy at the exact moment the crimson-bladed Inquisitor pressed her advantage, and something in him that had been holding carefully in check throughout the calculated, Controlled duel simply broke free entirely. This wasn't a fair fight against soldiers who'd chosen to stand against him anymore. This was exactly the kind of cruelty he had sailed oceans and fought gods to stop. Innocent people threatened as leverage, as a tool, as collateral in someone else's war. "Don't," he said, and the temperature of the entire square seemed to drop with the word. The crimson-bladed Inquisitor's next strike never landed. Luffy's form seemed to blur at the edges, some fundamental shift occurring beneath his skin that neither Inquisitor had any frame of reference to properly process. His rubber body taking on a strange, buoyant lightness, even as raw power radiated outward from him in waves that made the very air shimmer. "What is that?" the violet-bladed Inquisitor breathed, backing away despite years of training, screaming against retreat. Zoro, watching from across the square, felt something in his own hockey sense recognize the shift even before his eyes could fully process it. Not Conqueror's hockey this time, not the crushing wave of will he'd witnessed in the alley, but something else entirely, something ancient and playful and absolutely, terrifyingly powerful, stirring awake for what felt like the first time in this galaxy's memory. "Get everyone back," Zoro called to Sanji, already retreating himself. "Now, whatever this is, we don't want to be standing close when it fully wakes up." Luffy's hair had begun to shift color, a pale, sun-bleached white spreading from his roots, and around him the very fabric of reality seemed to loosen. Gravity itself becoming a suggestion rather than a law, as small stones and loose debris began drifting lazily upward in his vicinity. He looked, for just a moment, less like a boy in a straw hat and more like something out of an ancient myth given sudden, joyful, devastating form. "You were going to burn people who didn't do anything wrong," Luffy said, and his voice carried an odd, buoyant lightness, even as the words landed with the weight of absolute finality. "That's not something I let happen. Not here. Not anywhere." The granary door, along with the trooper squad standing before it with torches already lit, simply ceased to be a threat in the span of a single heartbeat. Not through violence exactly, though violence was certainly present, but through something that felt more like the universe itself reasserting what was allowed and what was not. Gravity and momentum bending briefly around Luffy's were like water around a stone. The troopers found themselves flung backward as though struck by an invisible, playful giant's hand. Torches extinguished mid-swing, the granary and everyone sheltering within it left entirely untouched. Thane, watching his carefully constructed trap unravel in real time before something his intelligence briefings had never remotely prepared him for, felt genuine fear settle into his chest for the first time since accepting this assignment. "Fall back," he ordered, voice cracking with barely restrained panic. "All units, fall back to the transports." Immediately. But retreat, it turned out, would not come easily against an opponent who had just discovered, for the first time in this galaxy, and perhaps for the first time in centuries of this particular myth waiting patiently to be earned. The transports
exactly
never
what he
made
was
it off the
truly
ground,
capable of becoming
what remained
when the
of the
people
trap
he'd
Colonel
sworn
Thane
to
had
protect
so
were
carefully
threatened
assembled,
beyond
dissolved
what
into
he could
chaos,
forgive.
as Luffy's awakened form moved through the square with a lightness that belied its devastating precision. Each strike landing with the effortless inevitability of a joke reaching its punchline. Troopers scattered. Walker armaments bent uselessly out of shape. The two Inquisitors driven back step by step despite every ounce of force-augmented speed they could summon. Zoro caught up with him first, falling into step beside a captain who looked, for the moment, both entirely himself and something vast and unfamiliar layered over that familiar core. "You good?" "I'm great," Luffy said and grinned. The same grin as always, just carried now by something that made the ground shiver faintly with each step. "Where's everyone else?" "Sanji's got the granary secured. Nami and Frankie are pinning down the last squad by the water tower. We're clear mostly." Zoro's eyes tracked the two Inquisitors regrouping at the square's edge. Thane retreating toward the tree line with the particular desperation of a man who had gambled his career on a plan now unraveling in front of him. "Accept them." "I'll handle it," Luffy said. This is the last part. He didn't run this time. He simply arrived, the space between himself and the retreating colonel collapsing in a way that defied ordinary explanation, and Thane found himself suddenly staring up from the dirt at a boy whose eyes held no anger at all, only the calm, absolute certainty of someone who had already won and simply needed the other side to understand it. You used fake villagers to trick us, Luffy said. Then you tried to burn real ones to make a point. That's the kind of thing that doesn't get a second chance for me. Kill me then, Thane spat. Some last reserve of imperial pride flaring even in defeat. Prove the report's right. Prove you're the monster sector command already believes you to be. Luffy considered this, actually considered it. In the unhurried way he considered most things that mattered. Then he reached down, closed a hand around the front of Thane's uniform, and hauled him upright with rubber-enhanced strength that left the colonel's boots dangling inches off the ground. No, Luffy said simply. Killing you doesn't fix anything. But you're gonna remember this, and you're gonna tell whoever sent you that trying to burn innocent people to get to us is the kind of mistake that only happens once. He set Thane down, none too gently, and stepped back. Go home, Colonel. Tell your empire we're not the threat they think we are. But we're also not the kind of people who'll just stand by while they hurt others. Their choice which version of us they get. The two inquisitors, watching their commanding officer released rather than executed, exchanged a wary glance that carried more genuine confusion than relief. Neither of them, in years of inquisitorial service, had encountered an enemy of this magnitude who chose mercy as a weapon rather than a weakness. It was in the retreat's chaos, amid scattered troopers and abandoned equipment, that the true cost of the battle finally revealed itself. Elder Tamsin Voro, the real elder, whose name had been stolen for the false distress call, whose actual village lay 2 valleys further west, and had spent the entire battle unaware their identity had been weaponized against strangers who'd nearly died trying to save them, arrived at Kesselite's outskirts just as the last transports lifted off in ragged retreat, having heard the commotion and traveled through the night out of simple human concern for whatever neighbors might be in danger. She found Chopper first, tending to a young village girl who'd been grazed by debris during the granary's near destruction, his hooves working with the same gentle precision he brought to every patient regardless of species or circumstance. You didn't have to come, the elder said, kneeling beside him, watching him work. None of you knew us. You came anyway, on nothing but a stolen name and a lie. Didn't matter if we knew you, Chopper said, focused on his work. Just mattered that someone needed help. It was a small moment, quiet against the backdrop of a battle, that had reshaped an entire sector's understanding of what the Straw Hats represented. But it settled something in the elder's expression that would carry forward into every account she gave of that night for years afterward. Not the story of Luffy's terrifying, gravity-bending power, though that story would certainly spread on its own, but the simpler, harder truth of strangers who came running toward danger for people who owed them. Nothing at all. The reunion at the Sunny, once the crew finally regrouped beneath the pale light of a rising dawn, carried a weight none of them fully articulated, but all of them felt. Luffy's transformation had receded gradually over the following hour, his hair fading back to black, the strange gravitational lightness settling back into ordinary rubber flexibility, though something in his bearing remained subtly changed, the particular exhaustion of a body that had reached for something it had never quite touched before and paid a price for the reaching. That thing you turned into, Usopp said carefully, once they were all safely aboard and the Sunny had lifted clear of Kesselite's atmosphere. What was that? Luffy considered the question with unusual seriousness, flexing his fingers as though testing whether the strange lightness might still linger somewhere beneath the skin. I don't really know, he admitted. Felt like something that's always been there, waiting. Like it needed the right reason to wake up. Robin, watching her captain with the careful attention of someone already cataloging the implications, spoke quietly into the silence that followed. Whatever it was, this galaxy has never seen anything like it. And somewhere above us right now, Imperial Intelligence is filing a report that's going to reach people considerably more dangerous than a garrison colonel with a grudge. She was not wrong. Even as the Sunny slipped back into the safety of deep space, a priority transmission was already climbing toward the highest levels of Imperial command, one that would, within days, reach the desk of an officer whose interest in unclassifiable threats extended far beyond ordinary sector command concerns, and whose attention, once drawn, rarely wavered until the matter was resolved by whatever means necessary. The Straw Hats had won the battle for Kesselite Village decisively, mercifully, and without a single innocent life lost. But in doing so, Luffy had shown this galaxy a glimpse of power it had no framework to categorize, no strategy to counter, and no intention of simply allowing the final
to
section
exist
of any story, Robin had once observed, is rarely the one where the fighting stops. It is the one where the fighting's meaning finally settles into place. For the Straw Hats, drifting once more through the quiet dark of open space with the Sunny's hull still bearing scorch marks from Kesselite Village, that meaning had crystallized into something none of them could easily ignore any longer. They were no longer strangers passing quietly through this galaxy. They were a fixed point in it now, a name spoken with fear in Imperial command centers and with cautious hope in occupied settlements across the sector. So what now? Usopp asked, voicing the question that had been sitting unspoken among the crew since their escape. We can't exactly keep hopping from moon to moon hoping nobody notices us. Not after what just happened. We're not going to hide, Luffy said, feet propped on the ship's railing, watching the stars scroll past with the same easy contentment he brought to any horizon, familiar or alien. Never have. Not going to start now. That's not really an answer, Captain, Nami pointed out, though there was no real frustration in it. Only the fond exasperation of someone who had long since stopped expecting tidy strategy from Luffy and learned instead to build workable plans around his unshakable instincts. Sure it is, Luffy said. We keep doing what we've been doing, helping people who need it, fighting people who deserve it, not joining anybody's war, not bowing to anybody's empire. Just us doing things our way. It was, Zoro reflected, exactly the kind of answer that sounded simple and was, in practice, almost impossibly difficult to live by in a galaxy built on the assumption that everyone eventually had to choose a side. Empire or rebellion, light or dark, conqueror or conquered. The Straw Hats had spent their entire journey through the Grand Line proving that a third path was possible. One built on loyalty to each other and to whatever crossed their path in need rather than to any flag or philosophy. This galaxy, vast and war-weary as it was, had never seen anyone attempt quite that particular kind of stubborn independence before. Miraset's message arrived 2 days later, routed through the same secure frequency she'd left with Robin, brief and carefully worded in case of interception. Asterisk word of Kesselite has reached command. Opinions divided. Some call you reckless. Others call you the first real hope this sector's seen in years. For what it's worth, I'm in the second camp. Doors open if you ever change your mind. No pressure either way. Stay alive, asterisk. Kita's message came not long after, considerably less formal. Asterisk, you've made Dre's landing into a legend factory. Half the settlement's naming children after your captain already. The other half's terrified you'll bring the whole Imperial fleet down on us eventually. Both halves are probably right. Come back sometime, drinks are on me, asterisk. Even Inquisitor Vale, through channels none of them could trace, left a single cryptic transmission relayed through an intermediary Robin never fully identified. Asterisk Sector Command has reassigned me pending review of the Kesselite incident. I do not know if that is punishment or opportunity yet. Either way, I have not forgotten the duel. I suspect our paths will cross again, under circumstances I cannot yet predict, asterisk. The Sunny sailed on through unfamiliar stars, carrying a crew that had, in the span of little more than a week, appended a sector's understanding of what resistance to tyranny could look like, without ever raising a single flag or swearing a single oath. They had refused the rebellion's compromises and rejected the Empire's tyranny in equal measure, choosing instead the harder, lonelier path of simply being exactly who they'd always been, pirates bound not by ideology, but by an unbreakable loyalty to each other and an equally unbreakable refusal to watch injustice pass by unchallenged. Somewhere far behind them, in a war room aboard an Imperial Star Destroyer, officers debated in hushed, uncertain tones what to do about an anomaly that defied every category their doctrine had ever prepared for. Too dangerous to ignore, too unpredictable to properly contain, and now, thanks to Kesselite Village, too well known across the sector to quietly erase. And somewhere else entirely, in dimly lit rebel command tents scattered across a dozen contested worlds, whispered stories of a boy who turned to living myth, and a swordsman who defeated an inquisitor without killing her, had already begun doing something far more dangerous to Imperial control than any single military strike ever could, giving the galaxy's downtrodden a reason, however small, to believe that even absolute power could be made to bend. Luffy, for his part, remained entirely unbothered by any of it, sprawled across the Sunny's deck with a satisfied grin, already turning his attention toward the next stretch of unfamiliar stars ahead. Whatever this galaxy wanted to call him, anomaly, threat, symbol, legend, mattered less to him than the simple, steady fact that had guided him across 100 oceans and now, impossibly, across the black gulf between two entire universes. Somewhere out there, someone else needed help, and the Thousand Sunny would find them. "Hey," he said, sitting up suddenly, eyes bright with the particular excitement that always preceded some new plan only he could see clearly yet. "You think there's more oceans out here somewhere? Or islands? This galaxy's gotta have something like that, right?" "There's no ocean in space, Luffy," Nami sighed, though she was already smiling despite herself. "There's gotta be something," Luffy insisted, grinning wide at the endless field of stars stretching out before them. "There's always something. Let's go find it." And so the Thousand Sunny sailed onward, deeper into a galaxy far, far away, carrying a crew that had already begun rewriting what both freedom and fear meant to everyone who crossed their path, leaving behind them a trail of humbled soldiers, grateful settlers, and a galactic empire that had just discovered, to its considerable and growing alarm, that some storms could not be predicted, contained, or conquered. No matter how vast the fleet sent across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of intention and consequence. And for the first time in living memory, something from beyond that web had reached into it, tugged loose a thread, and left the whole tapestry humming with a question no Jedi archive, no Sith holocron, and no Imperial doctrine had ever prepared this galaxy to answer. What happens when will alone proves as powerful as the Force itself? In the weeks that followed the battle at Kesselite Village, the answer to that question began writing itself across a dozen different worlds, in a dozen different languages, carried not by official record, but by the oldest and most stubborn form of resistance any empire had ever failed to fully stamp out. Rumor, whispered hope, and stories told over dinner tables in settlements too small and too poor to matter to anyone except the people who called them home. The Straw Hats did not become symbols by design. They became symbols because they refused, at every turn, to become anything else. They would not bow to the Empire's demand for order bought through fear. They would not accept the rebellion's arithmetic of acceptable losses, no matter how sound the strategic logic behind it. They simply moved through the galaxy the way they had always moved through the Grand Line, toward whoever needed them, away from whoever tried to own them, bound by nothing except the loyalty they carried for each other and the code Luffy had built his captaincy on since the very first crewmate joined his side. In a galaxy exhausted by absolutes, that kind of stubborn, unowned decency proved more disruptive than any weapon in either side's arsenal. Colonel Thane's report reached Imperial High Command within the week, stripped of the flattering spin he'd hoped to apply to it, and the consequences fell exactly as harshly as he'd feared. He was not executed. Imperial doctrine rarely wasted a useful scapegoat on anything so permanent when demotion and humiliation served the same disciplinary purpose. But he was reassigned to a supply depot on a frozen, forgotten world at the far edge of the Outer Rim, his name quietly excised from any official account of the Kesselite incident. The two Inquisitors, who had nearly ended Luffy's fight before his transformation, fared little better in the eyes of their superiors, their failure logged as a data point in a growing file that Imperial intelligence had begun referring to, in hushed and increasingly nervous briefings, as the Anomaly Dossier. It was a file that grew heavier with each passing week, and heavier files, in an empire built on the appearance of absolute control, had a way of eventually reaching desks far above any sector command's authority. Inquisitor Thess Vale's reassignment, by contrast, took a stranger turn. Pending review for her failure to fully report the outcome of her duel with Zoro, she found herself reassigned not to punishment duty, but to something closer to purgatory, an analyst post buried deep within Coruscant's inquisitorial archives, tasked with cataloging anomalous Force-related incidents from across the galaxy. It was meant as a demotion. She treated it quietly and without anyone in her chain of command quite noticing, as an opportunity, Deep in those archives, surrounded by centuries of half-forgotten Jedi texts and Sith fragments no one else had bothered to properly cross-reference, she began compiling her own private study of a power she had felt firsthand and never managed to explain, one that moved like the Force resisted it, and yet answered to no discipline the Jedi Order or the Sith had ever codified. She did not share her findings with her superiors. Some things she had decided in that alley outside Dre's Landing were worth understanding fully before deciding who deserved to understand them too. Miraset's report on the crew's refusal to join the convoy raid reached her superiors exactly as she'd promised, unedited, uncomfortable, and entirely honest about the ethical line the Straw Hats had drawn that her own organization had not always managed to hold. It did not go over well with every commander who read it. There were those within the rebellion who saw Luffy's refusal as naive, even dangerous, a luxury only the truly powerful could afford to indulge in a war where every resource mattered. But there were others, quieter voices, often the ones who had joined the cause for reasons closer to conscience than strategy, who read that same report and felt something loosen in their chest that they hadn't realized had been clenched tight for years. The reminder that somewhere in this exhausted, compromised galaxy, it remained possible to fight without becoming the thing you were fighting against. Mira kept the secure frequency open on her end for months afterward, checking it more often than strict protocol required. Though the Straw Hats never did call. The convoy raid went forward without them in the end, executed with heavier losses and messier consequences than command had hoped, a reminder that the arithmetic of war rarely balanced as cleanly on paper as it did in a briefing room. Word of it reached the crew eventually, secondhand and incomplete, and Luffy said nothing when he heard it, only grew quiet for a while, the particular quiet that settled over him whenever a choice he'd made collided with a cost he hadn't been able to prevent. It did not change his answer. It never would have, but it settled into him nonetheless. One more weight carried alongside all the others a captain accumulates across a lifetime of hard decisions, and his crew, watching him carry it without complaint, understood a little better what it meant to lead the way he led, not by avoiding cost, but by choosing deliberately and every single time, which costs he was willing to bear and which he refused to let anyone talk him into accepting. Kesselite Village itself became something closer to legend than history within a single season. Elder Voro's account of the battle, stripped of exaggeration, told plainly and without embellishment, spread through the sector's underground network of settlements faster than any imperial censor could contain it, carried by traders and smugglers and the particular kind of gossip that moves fastest when it offers a beleaguered population something rare and precious. Hope that did not require them to pick up a weapon themselves. Children in 3 different systems, within the year, would be named for a captain they had never met and likely never would. It was not the kind of legacy the Straw Hats had ever set out to build. It was, perhaps, exactly the kind of legacy that suited them best regardless. Robin's research into the old Jedi archive continued in the quiet hours between adventures, the fragmentary theory of Rinkal, the unbent will slowly filling in as she cross-referenced what scraps of ancient text she could recover against everything the crew already understood about hockey. She never did find conclusive proof of where this galaxy's ancient theorists believed that distant, will-born power had originated, whether it truly shared a root with the Force or merely resembled it through some cosmic coincidence, too vast to properly untangle. But she found enough to understand one thing clearly. The Straw Hats were not the first outsiders this galaxy's oldest scholars had theorized about, merely the first to arrive and prove the theory true. That realization sat with her for a long time, turning slowly in her mind on quiet nights aboard the Sunny. The possibility that somewhere beyond even this galaxy's vast reach, other currents, other powers, other travelers might exist, waiting for their own doorway to open. Zoro's duel with Vale, and the strange near-injury Luffy had suffered against the Inquisitor's blades at Kesselite, left its own quiet mark on the crew's understanding of their place in this new world. They were not invincible here, not truly, not against opponents who understood how to reach for the Force's closer kinship to hockey rather than simply overpowering it with brute force. That knowledge sharpened Zoro's training in the weeks that followed, long hours spent honing the edge between his observation and the strange, static-laced hum of this galaxy's ambient energy until he could read it as clearly as he'd once read the currents of the Grand Line. He did not know, yet, whether he would face Vale again, or something worse, sent by an empire that would not tolerate this particular humiliation indefinitely. But he trained as though he would, because that was simply what he did, and because some fights, once started, had a way of insisting on a proper ending. Luffy's transformation at Kesselite, the strange, gravity-bending lightness that had swept through him in defense of strangers who owed him nothing, did not return in the weeks that followed, no matter how many smaller skirmishes the crew found themselves drawn into across the sector. It remained, for now, a door glimpsed once, and then closed again, waiting for whatever precise combination of will and necessity had opened it the first time. Luffy did not chase it deliberately, did not train for it the way Zoro trained his haki, because that had never been how it worked for him. Not with Gear 2nd, not with Gear 4th, and evidently not with whatever this new, strange, galaxy-shaking awakening had been either. It would come again when it needed to. He trusted that the way he trusted everything else about his own body and his own crew, without hesitation, and without needing to fully understand why. The Empire, for its part, did not stop looking. The anomaly dossier grew thicker by the month, sightings and rumors and half-confirmed reports filtering in from across the sector, as the Straw Hats continued doing precisely what Luffy had promised, helping where help was needed, fighting where a fight was deserved, and refusing, absolutely and completely, to be claimed by anyone's flag. Somewhere in the depths of Imperial intelligence, a growing faction of officers had begun to argue, quietly and carefully, that garrison-level responses and even inquisitorial hunting parties were no longer sufficient to the scale of the problem. That whatever this crew represented required attention from considerably higher up the chain than a single sector command could authorize. Those arguments had not yet reached the desk of anyone powerful enough to act on them decisively. But arguments like that, once started in an empire built on control, rarely stayed quiet for long. The rebellion, meanwhile, continued to watch and wait with a patient, careful interest of an organization that had learned the hard way not to force alliances that weren't ready to be made. Myra's open frequency remained just that, open, unpressured, waiting for a day that might never come, or might come sooner than anyone expected if the Empire's growing interest in the crew ever forced their hand toward a side they'd so far managed to avoid choosing entirely. And through it all, the Thousand Sunnies sailed on, carrying 9 travelers further from home than any of them could properly measure, into a galaxy that had never imagined a power like theirs, and had not yet decided whether to fear it, court it, or simply learn, slowly and reluctantly, to live alongside it. They had crashed into this reality as an anomaly, a mystery, a threat too strange to categorize. In the span of a single tumultuous week, they had become something this galaxy needed considerably more than it had realized. Proof that even in a place bound by ancient philosophies of light and dark, order and rebellion, there remained room for a third path entirely, one built not on doctrine or ideology, but on the simple, stubborn, unbreakable loyalty of a crew that had sailed to the edge of their own universe and kept right on sailing when the ocean beneath them turned to stars. Somewhere ahead of them, unseen and unknowable, new storms were already gathering. Imperial factions debating whether the time for half measures had passed. An inquisitor quietly building a private theory that might one day change how this galaxy understood its own power. A rebellion still hoping for allies it could not yet convince to join. None of it slowed the Sunny's course. None of it dimmed the grin on her captain's face as he leaned against the railing, watching an alien starfield scroll past with the same restless hunger for the horizon that had carried him across every ocean he'd ever known. "Hey," Luffy said again, to no one in particular, eyes bright with the promise of whatever came next. "Let's go find out what's out there." And the galaxy, whether it was ready or not, sailed on with him.